Hello, my name is Michael Moran, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you what I learned about Matt Daniels this week. A little bit about Matt Daniels. He's the CEO, founder, and editor of the data visualization publication called The Pudding. He's been published in a variety of places, including the Washington Post, Vox, and the Marshall Project. He loves music and pop culture, and a lot of his work ends up using those themes. In fact, the first time I encountered his work was back in 2015, a year after he published a work on the hip-hop vocabulary. Here's a screen recording of myself going through it, but it's a graph of different rap artists and how many different unique words they used within their first 35,000 lyrics. I thought this was really interesting at the time, and it was interesting to see that he was on the list of people to choose from this week. I looked into his background. There wasn't a whole lot out there, but I found his LinkedIn, a Medium interview, and a talk that he did in 2019. One quote I found on the Pudding's website was, "I'm self-taught with a degree in business and 7 years of experience making PowerPoint slides." He graduated in 2009 with a bachelor's in business from University of Michigan. He went on to work for American Express and Prophecy as a brand strategy consultant. He then found a home for the next 5 years at Undercurrent, a digital strategy firm. I think that's where he got most of his PowerPoint slide experience. He then took a sabbatical in 2014 where he wanted to learn to code, and that's when he went viral for that rap vocabulary project I just mentioned. The next year, he started his own agency called Polygraph with a focus on data visualization, and 2 years later, the group started another component called The Pudding, which is a publication where they just do, fun projects. So here are the two projects that he is responsible for: Polygraph from 2015 and The Pudding 2 years later. So a little bit about Polygraph. The revenue generated from client projects at Polygraph are the funds that are used to fund the entire editorial side of The Pudding. So there's no ads in The Pudding, but they are very particular about what kind of clients they accept at Polygraph. All the projects have to have public-facing data visualization components, which I'll show an example of in a second. Some of their clients include YouTube, Netflix, Spotify, USA Today, IBM Watson, and Kickstarter. Here's a quote that I found in an article about them in 2017, where we try to take on client work to just support our staff and basically to sustain The Pudding. With about 3 to 6 freelancers each quarter, what we're doing is maybe kind of backwards, Goldenberg said. The thing about our editorial work is that also essentially serves as marketing for us. Generally, when we publish a new project on The Pudding, we get a few business inquiries, and it's a nice symbiotic relationship. As someone who's worked in agencies in the past, I thought this was really interesting. Here's an outcome of the project they did with Kickstarter. As someone who's colorblind, I just saw a bunch of colorblind tests, but they're representing different types of Kickstarter projects in each city and color-coded. Now moving on to The Pudding. It is the same 6 full-time staff folks that work at Polygraph plus freelance help. They do data storytelling they specialize in data storytelling that does not follow the news cycle. So they have a diverse skill set, but everyone can code and write stories. A quote from Matt Daniels in 2018. The Pudding is a publication for visual stories. Instead of having prose-led stories with a lot of writing, we try to design some type of visual explanation of a story using code, animation, illustration, and all sorts of tools for visual learners. We'll often take on really complex topics that would be really hard to write about, but actually lend themselves well to a visual story. A similar theme from the earlier project Matt did. This is a project on music bubbles, where he layers his interest in music over maps and data visualization on a stepwise experience that is based on your current location. And it's showing us here the most popular songs in a particular city at a particular time. So this website's changing each time you visit it. I found the process that Matt Daniels and his team used to be very interesting. Russell Goldenberg is one of his co-founders and editors at the Pudding and Polygraph. He said, "We don't have assignments, we don't have desks. The Pudding gives people a place to explore topics where they're passionate about." In several interviews, Matt compared making a good data story of visualization at the Pudding to making a movie. Each project takes about a month to come to fruition. It's a very collaborative process, but each story is led by a different person, a director. Often the data set doesn't exist, but there is data out there, says Russell Goldenberg. They're often creating their own data sets to bring these stories to life, and they use D3.js to bring their data to be interactive. So the next couple slides, I actually screenshotted from Matt's presentation at the first annual External Data Conference in New York City 2 years ago. And the process that he talks about is starting with ideas, being prolific and coming up with many ideas, narrowing them down, exploring them fully, and then actually building the presentation. We'll go into those each a little bit more here. So for the ideas, one of their main things is every week the Pudding journalists have a story time where they meet and present an idea for a story. Everyone then votes on their favorite idea at the end. And this is an example where he shared a screenshot of one of the outcomes of that meeting, where they're talking about how they're going to visualize Africa is urbanizing without globalizing. The next step was selection, follow the rubric, and they then try to narrow down their topics and the purpose. Does it answer or does it follow a purpose? Does it answer a publicly divisive question? Have we improved the public discourse on a topic? Have we enhanced a timeless water cooler happy hour discussion? And passion, could the authors spend 1 to 2 months, even for free, on the story with enough excitement or content? Then after selection was exploration. This seemed like by far the biggest part of their process. Where they are figuring out what data is available, what story they're trying to tell, all before they need to start coding anything. So the pre-presentation checklist is what is a 2 to 3 sentence summary, prove the content is interesting, validate with data and or storyboarding, and project specifications like number of charts, is it scrolly, is it interactive, is it static, etc. Throughout this process, they have opportunities for feedback, which I thought was very interesting. They said it was inspired by Pixar, which makes sense considering Matt compares the whole process to making a movie. According to him, the team reacts with yes or no on whether for presentation phase, project could get shelved, killed, bring on collaborator, take flyer, and go against majority. If yes, there's 3 more sessions. The 3 sessions here is what I found most interesting. So the first step in giving feedback is a what-if session where the writer will present what they have so far, and everyone will suggest different ways that it could be improved, is what if. Then later on, they'll have a dump feedback session, which means they'll have a Google Doc where folks can go and write every single thing that they think could be different about it, but the author is not beholden to any of it. And then the last section is refine, where the author comes in with specific sections that he wants to get feedback on. And as a whole, this is their process: idea, selection, exploration, and presentation. So Matt's current work, he is very busy. Fortunately, his website had a list of all of his project archive, and this is just a small snippet of it. His work typically has to do with topics outside the news cycle and relate to social good or pop culture. Matt's work usually involves some combination of music, maps, and pop culture. This was his project with Vox, which I thought was interesting, that they took the data visualization and turned it into a video. And it was narrated, and Matt had his own interview portions. This particular piece was analyzing the trend of men's male vocalists using falsetto and higher vocal ranges. Another really interesting work that Matt did with the pudding was analyzing Ali Wong and the structure of stand-up comedy. They took her whole script and of her stand-up special and then compared it with the laughter in the show, and then found the laughter climax and analyzed basically the whole structure of the show, or the special, using data visualization. This particular one was a stepwise experience where you scrolled and it kind of showed you the interesting parts as they were happening. A really powerful piece he did recently in October 2020 was reconstructing the 7 days of protests in Minneapolis after George Floyd's death. Here we had like 155 different live streams that he archived and timed, and you could click into them and see what was happening at every given moment at any place in the week following George Floyd's death in Minneapolis. One other thing I'd like to point out about his work is he'll often present the same data set in multiple ways, publish them in multiple ways. So you see on the left a piece called Population Mountains and a piece on the right called Human Terrain. And both are exploring the same concept, that is mapping population data as if it were terrain data, where taller lines are representative of more population in that area and population density. But here on the left, we have Population Mountains, which is a scrolled experience where it's just showing you the interesting parts and drawing your eye to some interesting things to look at, whereas the Human Terrain is a fully exploratory where you can zoom in, zoom out, scroll around, and investigate and come to your own conclusions. Lastly, this was the project that really kind of solidified me picking doing this presentation on Matt Daniels, was How Bad Is Your Spotify, where he did data visualization as in a very untraditional way, I thought, where he's looking at your Spotify data and judging you and telling you how bad your particular musical taste is, while like using a lot of data and artificial intelligence to do this. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Those were some of my favorite projects from his, and I look forward to learning about everyone else's people. Thanks.